So thank you once more, everyone, for being with us tonight and joining the session. I appreciate the fact that you took out your time and you decided to turn up for this discussion for how we effectively optimize your preparation. And I would like people who are in the session first to please share your questions, if any, so that we can take it and steer it accordingly. So, one of the major advices that I would like to start off for everyone out here when it comes to applying to an institute like Tata Institute of Social Sciences is that many of you who are looking at a master's opportunity to TISS and might be very fresh from exams like a CAT or even a ZAT in the month of January, which is coming up, and some of you might even be looking at exams like SNAP by Symbiosis on the 20th of December, if not later on. The first important advice to all of you will be to not equate Tata Institute of Social Sciences with a business school. So that is the first mistake we all make. That if you're applying to an exam like CAT, and say we might be applying for MBA finance or HR or marketing or systems, we keep TISSNet as one of those choices. That is fair enough. I mean, you can have as many choices in your life to appear for exams. But the mistake we make is we equate TISS to a B school. So I would request everyone to kindly not equate Tata Institute of Social Sciences to a business school, because it is not a business school. If you cannot understand from its name itself, I will repeat, it's a social science school. It's a social science institution, right? A social science institution has been set up to feed into the requirements of the society so that it can accelerate the development of the society, right? So that philosophy in your mind should be deeply ingrained when you're preparing for the TISS entrance as well as interviews. So that is going to be our starting point for the next 60 days preparation, which is leading to the TISSNet exam. Okay. That you should realize TISS is society, like the keywords, the buzzwords, when you look at TISS as an institution, right? Now, when I ask you society, and if I, open this to everyone out here, what are the things which come to your mind? When I ask you society, and I tell you, okay, society, Indian society, suppose, more specific. So if people can write on your chat box, by Indian society, what comes to your mind directly? There is no right or wrong answer. You can put forward any of your opinion in the chat box. My question is once more, when you think of Indian society, what is the first keyword that comes to your mind? Great. I'm getting some inputs. Everyone feel free to participate, because there is no right or wrong. Again, this discussion is not to judge you. This discussion is to help you uh, accelerate your preparation. Very interesting keywords coming on my chat box. Everyone else, feel free to share. You can share multiples. There is no one word, of course. You can share. How amazing. So you see, one thing for sure, all of you, I can assure you, will form an excellent team if you're together. So because every input of yours makes great sense to your preparation. Keep writing, keep sharing, don't worry. I will start discussing some of the points that you're sharing, right? I can see Poverty by Monami, right? So poverty alleviation schemes of the Indian government, right? History of poverty, poverty line and its understanding, committees connected to poverty, right? And everything connected with it, which are hitting the current affairs even in this year with the COVID-19 pandemic, are all going to be supremely important. So you see, you don't have to go very far with your preparation. You have to believe in what you are aware of from the society around you. The society around you is not just your neighbor or your locality nowadays, right? You're watching TV, you're consuming information, you are on your mobile phone, and you are consuming information from every parts of the world. So the society is a very broad context to you. Tata Institute of Social Sciences is such an institution that picks up cues from all of these buzzwords for their selection procedure into their programs. Okay. I saw a keyword like homophobia, which is very pertinent. And with homophobia decriminalized in Section 377, the lawyers whose research paper was quoted by the Supreme Court to decriminalize and to put forward the final verdict, all of these are going to be supremely important, right? Schemes of government introduced, or if any, if not Supreme Court judgments connected with homophobia, or even an international news which has really shaped the landscape of homosexuality in the world and the society at large, they all become important sources of information for your preparation towards an institute like this. I saw patriarchy quite naturally, right? So, patriarchy, as we know, it also has its fallouts in domestic violence and the protection of domestic violence for women from patriarchy, or the side effects of patriarchy, gender gap and the gender inequality, including the gender inequality index, the gender gap issues rising out of COVID-19, and if there is any specific scheme connected with minimizing that gap, again becomes very important sources of questions. So what I want you to realize is that you don't have to be someone extremely specially gifted or knowledgeable, or you don't have to study millions of books to prepare, but you have to be very active in your sensibilities towards the society when you're preparing for a social science discourse. It is a very multidisciplinary field, so you cannot choose to be selective. You can't say, I will only be corporate in nature. You can't, because you will be tested on all grounds before you finally reach the point where you can call your shots. Because society at large is intertwined. Someone wrote intersectionality, someone wrote plurality. Very true. In plurality, we are now even talking about issues stemming out of secularism, right? Which is being questioned by things like the Citizens Amendment Act, CAA. All of us were so busy with CAA till the pandemic happened. Then we forgot, right? Because we realized that there are much more important things in our life than to fight over other secondary issues. What did we consider to be important is health. This is the year of health. And health issues, current affairs on health, health schemes, policies are going to be very important. Even if you don't like to read about diseases, you have to read it. You feel, no, I think diseases are very negative. I don't like negative vibes. There is no option. But for this year, you have to really be sensitive towards communicable disease, non-communicable disease, including mental health disorders, right? So you have to believe in that pulse of the society when you're preparing for an exam like TISS, and you should be able to have resources which will optimize your preparation, right? And when it comes to such resources, what we do in Catalyst is we try to collate all of these sensory experiences into material, right? So you might be preparing for from books which have been published, which are readily available in the market. They are indeed very good sources, right? But remember, an exam paper always is reflective of the year you are in. An exam paper is always reflective of the year you are in. Most of the books, when they were published, we are not sure at what time of the year they were published. So you use books for static GK, for references, for current affairs also up to a certain extent, right? But also realize of all those parts which are going to be more important for the year you are targeting, right? You can't be blind with studying and mugging up everything, right? Because mindlessly trying to uh, memorize GK until and unless you have a photographic memory rather, it's going to be a very difficult task. So we are starting the session tonight with GK. Sometimes this is what one part which students, they either talk a lot about or they do not talk about. Most of the times when you do not talk about, we realize that you feel, well, last 2 months we will mug up GK and things will come common from it, which can work provided you mug up what is important for that year, isn't it? So that is where I feel all of us have to be really concerned. Anusha writes, unequal share of domestic labor. Absolutely true. Like, there is a great discussion about labor, employment, labor participation rate. And organizations like the International Labor Organization and their work that they have done, the reports they have published, right? India has not yet consorted, uh, great understanding about labor and employment. Only the Center for Monitoring of Impact Evaluation, CMIE, they do some of that work. So their reports are going to be supremely important when you're preparing and learning, right? So uh, Disha is writing conservative. Okay. Now, when it comes to being a conservative society, it basically means about the stereotypes of the society, right? Stereotypes basically refer to that, okay, suppose we say women can't fly aircrafts, but there is no reason why they can't, right? So the ones who flew the aircraft or joined the air force are going to be important for your exam. They're not going to ask you how many male pilots are there, right? But if it's female pilots, that is going to make more sense, right? Because generally we don't come across so many female pilots in our country, right? We believe that if someone is disabled, it becomes very difficult for them to lead a quality life, right? Yet we find enough people climbing the Mount Everest who are disabled, people who are athletes, winning races, lifting weights, crossing the English Channel, if not more, right? So they are the ones who are creating the level in our society, right? Because when we look at the fluctuations in our society, right, The fluctuations, we find highs and lows, right? Highs are, of course, the ones who have achieved and are going on achieving, and the lows are the ones who possibly are deprived. So, an institution like this is meant to feed into that response towards addressing these needs of our society. And that is why I started with the disclaimer that do not equate TISS to a B school, to an IIM, to an XLRI, because the vision and mission is very different, right? So your mindset towards an exam of social science is also going to be substantially different. Even if you're eyeing, quote unquote, corporate programs like human resource management, I would again like to share this disclaimer with all of you. Students say that, or ask us also a lot, that isn't HRM the flagship program of TISS? Now, the word flagship has been coined by you, not by TISS. In nowhere on TISS website you will find ever TISS claiming that HRM is our main program. TISS is a school of social work. In 1936, it was created as Dorabji School of Social Work, and since then it has functioned as a school of social work, where human resource management has been created so that sensible professionals can feed into the corporate culture. So again, that myth should be very clear in your head, right? I keep on receiving so many queries over the years that will I be placed if I don't study HRM at TISS? The point is that if students from other streams were not placed over the last 70 years, there would have been a turmoil with the institute, isn't it? If students did not like the course, they were, something which made no sense. You would have got to know, isn't it? Unfortunately, our social system is corporate driven. So everyone looks at, shortcuts of how you will make the maximum benefit. So even the internet, the Google, they give you more returns or information about this human resource management. Kundan, the significance of human resource management at TISS, right? Now, if you are noting it down, please quote my name during your interview. So, the human resource management program at TISS provides sensible human resource managers. As simple as that. Now, how you define sensibility is up to you, right?
I beg your pardon, sir. I have a question. This
Yes,
is
Shreya, please
Shreya.
go ahead. Of course.
Yeah, you rightly said the the significance of HRM course, but I've not been able to understand the rationale behind introducing this course. Like, I happened to go through the website. I was mainly interested in the healthcare sector, but still, since there was a lot of hype with respect to this particular course,
Right.
so it sounded more like a corporate course to me.
Yes.
So
So the point is
I did.
that, right. Thanks for asking the question, Shreya. Though, tonight I'll tell you, we will try to refrain from uh, helping, like, or addressing too many queries on courses. But I will still do this for the sake of the interest of the group at large. So Shreya and the rest, human resource management at TISS, if you read the description very clearly, right? And if you are not sure yet, I will quickly share the human resource management course page with all of you so that every one of you are on the same page. Because many times what we are doing is, unfortunately, we are reading from every other resource than the official site of TISS. I find students sharing with me syllabus of TISSNet which I've never heard of. And I don't know from where they find the syllabuses. You have to only refer to the syllabus that's offered or mentioned in the official website. So for people who are trying to understand what this human resource management program actually means at TISS, so so if you see what I meant is possibly mentioned in the first couple of lines of the course description itself. The course is meant to develop you into a professionally competent and socially sensitive management graduate. The word socially sensitive, I wish they would write in bolds. Now, what is socially sensitive? You may ask, sir, are the other managers socially insensitive? It's a very important question to know the difference. And my answer will be maybe they are. Maybe they are in a lot of cases. You may ask, sir, why? So, a socially sensitive human resource manager is the ones who understands human resource management inwards out or inside out. What is inside? Who's inside? My inside, my mind, my problems, right? So you will ask, sir, do the other human resource managers don't do that? Well, uh, it's not that they don't do, but the program at TISS is meant to train you like that. It is created to make you understand. If you see in the first semester itself, you are taught labor law. Labor law is not something that you are given a book of law and told that, okay, hi Shreya, this is your entire list of labor laws. So you know the laws. But you are taught labor law from making you understand the socio-legal background of why the laws were enacted. There are reasons, right? There are stories behind the creation of each law. Labor unrest, labor protest, right? Labor inequality, gender gap, gender wage gap, isn't it? Violence, unrest, exploitation, untimely payments, wage issues, right? So that is the type of emphasis which is given, because the law, once is created, it is quite structured, and you know what is correct and what is not correct, right? But the background of the law is what is makes you socially sensitive, right? So I hope Shreya and the rest that this aspect is kind of clear to all of you, that this is going to be a program which is meant to feed into that network of corporate requirement, which is requiring people who will understand human beings inside out, right? So that's one very important point that every one of us should be aware of. Okay. So Kundan, I hope it's clear to you, right? If you're there, Kundan.
Yes, yes, completely.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Any other questions from anyone else? Feel free to uh, please, ask me on chat. Uh, I don't mind even if you ask using your mic, right? We want this to be a discussion, not me lecturing you, right? Always. So coming to the next other point is that the TISNet GK, or a social science GK again, addresses a lot of these fundamental issues. If you see labor law, and when I spoke of law, a law is created always based on certain provisions of our constitution. And these provisions of constitutions are again sources of question which come a lot in our entrance exams. Okay. The constitution laws basically, or the provision of constitution basically means the type of articles, the type of amendments, the type of sections which give rise to the different policies or the schemes or even the acts. These should be very clear to you. Whether it is Article 21A of the Constitution, whether it is, Article 45, they're all connected to child care, child education, right? Even the labor code laws, they are also connected to certain provisions. The scheduled caste, scheduled tribe issues are also connected with the parts or the articles of the Constitution, the different schedules of the Constitution. So that is going to be a supremely important aspect, which again becomes a primary source of questions for the TISSNet exam, right? Whether it is like your understanding connected with rural development, right? So you might be wondering, oh God, I am an urban student. I don't know anything about rural development. But the fact of the matter is, our entire country is rural. How many cities are there in our country? It will finish less than your 10 fingers, I can assure you. When I talk of cities, and metropolitan cities are even lesser. The rest of India is rural, right? So if you are ignorant about those aspects, then you will be missing out on your question sources of GK, right? So now rural governance, rural perspective are again shaped from the constitution, isn't it? All of those are fundamental to what has happened in the past and what has happened even in 2020. Whether it is the public distribution system connected with food security, and due to COVID-19 pandemic, we saw certain schemes of government spiking up, their demands increasing, right? And certain policies not being spoken of any more. So when you're preparing for GK, you should emphasize on those aspects more, right? Because the possibility of them featuring in your question is much higher than reading about 200 policies and schemes in India and trying to remember everything. And now the problem is with the present government, the jargon of names and the abbreviations are mind-boggling. So I'm just kind of making all of you understand that believe in the year you are in, believe in what's happening around you. Okay. You are in a year which your seniors have not witnessed. Remember, 2020 is a year of pandemic which none of us witnessed earlier. So people who got through the exam last year, when they share your inputs with you, there's a high possibility those inputs might change this year. So take every advice with a pinch of salt, including mine. But remember, you will be tested for the priorities of the society. Many students, I find, keep on telling me that, sir, I did not like maths. I find it, I mean, so funny, so strange. The reason why I took up humanities is because I wanted to stay away from maths. And here I want to get into the top social science institution in our country, and I will again be tested with maths, right? How do I deal with it? So, my first advice and request to all of you preparing will be, please do not refer to CAT or ZAT material for mathematics of social science entrance at all. I can guarantee and assure you, and you can, take it for writing. This year in the CAT exam, there were multiple questions from chapters and concepts like functions. Okay. Functions is basically a rule which is taught typically in a little higher level mathematics, right? And some of you who might have given CAT, or you might have done it. It is represented by f of x or g of x and so on and so forth. Function is a rule. If I say x plus 1 equal to 2, then we can say that it is a function. It's a rule. So multiple questions in CAT were given on functions. Those were fundamentally very simple. And I can assure you a class 7th or 8th standard student, if they understand what function is in the proper way, can do it. But everyone labeled the CAT paper as very difficult this time. Okay. Now the reason they found it difficult is because the application of function is not clear in your heads the way it is supposed to be. Because function is an integral part in a lot of analysis of financial systems in management. Okay. Whether it is economics, whether it is market, capital, FDI, inflow. a company's management, right? So quite naturally, if you want to study at a B school who are offering financial management or an MBA in finance, the possibility of questions from finance or from function is very high. So you cannot equate CAT maths to a TISSNet maths. What happens in the TISSNet math is you are given some very, very fundamental questions which do not exceed a standard of difficulty of NCRT class 10th. I want to take the name of NCRT because in India our boards differ a lot, right? NCRT is the pattern which the CBSE board also follows. So they will give you questions which are fundamental to NCRT type of uh, level of difficulty across chapters that will be necessary when you will be working or you are studying social science. What are these chapters? Suppose at TISS you have gone out on a field work, okay? And in a field work, you're working in agriculture, right? Is there anyone who wants to work with agriculture in the session tonight? You can feel free to share your opinion. Saurav says yes. Thanks, Saurav. Anyone else wants to work with agriculture or is very interested to work with agriculture?
So,
Again,
my father is a agriculture. My father is a agriculturist,
so
farmer.
good to
Sorry.
know that, Saurav. Thank you. Anyone else who wants to work with agriculture other than Saurav? We have like close to 30 plus participants in the session. Okay, till all of you decide whether you want to work with agriculture, I will just elaborate the example. So suppose Saurav is out in a field work and he's working on land holding of women farmers, land holding rights of women farmers. Okay, by land holding means that what is the percentage area in cultivable lands that are owned by female farmers, okay, right? So he's out in the field, okay, so he's trying to understand what percentage it is, right? So you see the word percentage I'm using.
Mm,
So when I talk about percentage and I'm talking about a land, sort of would be required to calculate the area of the land, the perimeter of the land, isn't it?
mm,
So
yeah.
quite naturally, questions from mensuration and geometry, which require you to apply and these contexts, are going to be important for your exam, right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. How many of you want to work with the health sector? Please
Sure.
feel free to participate. I would request
Sure. I am.
if you can keep your mics on mute and write on the chat box. I can pick up your cues. Thank you. Health sector. How many of you want to work with the health sector? Great. Health is doing well. And I wish all of you great health for the new year at least. Right. Okay. So in the health sector, suppose I'm just giving you an understanding. You want to work with addressing the issues of institutional health or institutional health access in our country. Okay. And you want to understand the quality of healthcare. By quality means what? If I go to a hospital with a problem, my problem is solved, isn't it? That is the quality all of us are wanting, right? So suppose you have a set of data and you want to understand across the different towns or cities or villages in India, which village or city saw the highest rating in access to healthcare in institutional level. The highest ratings means that maximum number of people were cured, right, or were happy. So that is what we call the modal value in statistics, isn't it? the one with the highest frequency. So your basics of statistics and your application and understanding of statistics will be tested with respect to data in an exam like TISSNet. Am I being clear to all of you? Right. Next question. How many of you want to work with environment, if any? How many of you want to work with environment? Okay. No one wants to work with environment, it seems. Environment, ecology, natural resource, climate change. These are all environment. Pollution, global warming, environmental laws. Great. I think we have some inflows with Nitin Ambapali wanting to or interested in working for the environment. Now, let me share this understanding with you. Suppose with environment, you want to understand. You want to understand with the usage of traditional fuels or traditional sources of energy, what has been the human cost in our society? By human cost, I mean it could be loss of lives, it could be loss of employment, businesses, and so on and so forth. Okay. Like maybe, uh, a loss of livelihood, like maybe a biodiversity has got so polluted that the livelihood that it supported, right, it has got affected, right? So uh, if suppose you want to know that, right, then possibly your understanding of profit and loss is going to be critical, right? Whether we gained, whether we lost. When do we gain? When our output is higher than our input. That is what our gain is. When do we lose? When our output is lower than our input, isn't it? So these fundamental aspects are very critical when you are looking ahead for your mathematics and your analytical ability when it comes to social science entrances, right? Social science entrances like even require you to apply some basic aspects of, say, understanding what we call share of voice in a campaign. Share of a voice basically is a measure of probability, and it is extensively used in social media, in analytics. So, in media and cultural studies offered by TISS, you might be required to apply the basics of probability, right? Which basically helps you to understand the number of favorable outcomes. If you roll a die and you want a six, there is only one six out of the six numbers in a die. So the probability of getting your choice is 1 by 6, right? Similarly, if you roll two such die and you want six on both the ends, there is only one such situation when both the sixes will happen. But since there are two die, for each of the six cases of die 1, you have six cases from die 2. So if you add up 6 plus 6 plus 6 like that six times, you will have 36 as your sample size, out of which only one would be your most favorable one. So 1 by 36 or for rolling two die will lead to your required outcome. So such applications are expected in you when you are gearing up and preparing for your mathematics, right? So that is where I feel you should all have the sensibility of optimizing your preparation. Why I am trying to share these with all of you is that don't go overboard trying to study and practice 1,000 questions from maths. No, each chapter of maths or whatever, wherever you are referring to, when we train our students, as you can see on your screen, each of these chapters have hand-picked stock problems from maths. You don't have to do millions of questions to be good in mathematics, or to be strong with your application. You have to address the stock problems. What is a stock problem? If I suppose I take for instance a chapter like permutation and combination, how many of you in this class like permutation and combination, by the way? You can be very candid about it. Okay, very good to see that Saurav raised his hands. My question was, how many of you like permutation and combination? Madhurima said me. How many of you do not like permutation and combination? Do not. I mean, we are very non-judgmental tonight. Shreya says she's not very fond of permutation combination. Srishti also, Akanksha also, Anusha also. So I can see a clear Aman. Okay, Aman says, fair enough, Aman. Your boat can be different. So in a permutation and combination, since we are nearing dinner time, I want to explain a very fundamental concept with all of you, right? Suppose for tonight, like, being a Saturday night, you're feeling a little festive and you want to celebrate. And maybe from a food delivery app, right? You are thinking that, okay, what should I do? Like, shall I order like from a Chinese restaurant, or shall I order from an Indian restaurant? Okay. And on your app, suppose, just for your example, you find that the Chinese restaurant has like 20 items you can choose from, and the Indian restaurant has like 30 items you can choose from. Okay. So the point is that if someone asks you that, imagine that if you want to order from both the restaurants, okay, then what can be the total number of types of orders you can make? I'll repeat once more. On your food delivery app, you are contemplating between ordering from a Chinese restaurant and an Indian restaurant. And the Chinese restaurant has 20 options, the Indian restaurant has 30 options. Okay. And I ask you, what are the total number of ways you can order from these two restaurants? Okay. Or like, maybe let me make it more specific and clear to you. Suppose you want to choose one from each. You want a Chinese food and you want an Indian food. What could be the total number of ways? Suppose someone asks you. So it's otherwise very difficult to calculate, because if you want to make every combination manually, it will take a whole lot of time. And that is why permutation and combination concepts were created. It was not created just to tell you that, okay, NCR, NPR, no, not like that. Factorial. Students again mug up these formula without understanding what it is about. No scientist woke up one morning and said factorial, okay? They created the concept to help you ease in your calculation. So the concept is that if from each of the 30 items of the Indian restaurant, you can pick one, for each of such picking or choice, you have 20 things to choose from the Chinese restaurant. Again, like the question of which I shared earlier, that 30 or 20 from each, it gets multiplied with each other, because each time you're selecting one item from, say, the Chinese restaurant, the Indian restaurant gives you 30 choices and the Chinese restaurant has 20 such orders, right? If you visualize, so imagine that 20 orders, you are selecting one, it is glowing, and for that 20 you have 30 for each selection. So in total, if you go 30, 30, 30, 30 like that 20 times, you will have 600 as your total choices, right? So that is again the basics of a chapter in permutation combination, which we find many of us finding it very difficult to deal with. right? So Nitin, Aman and the others, I hope hearing the discussion up to a certain extent, you can breathe a little easier with maths if you are finding that to be challenging. Okay. I would like to take some more questions before we move ahead with the next part of our discussion. Anything specific that you want to ask me? Because I am here to address your queries. If you want, you can even use your mic. We spoke about GK, we spoke about maths. GK is not yet done, of course. GK is broad, but I told you the sensibility of GK, that you cannot study GK mindlessly. You have to look at the society. You have to look at the 17 sustainable goals of United Nations. No poverty, zero hunger, quality health, education, gender equality, water consumption and sanitation, right? Then, decent work and economic growth. And for each, you have to map the sources of questions in the Indian context. A lot of people are asking me that if outside India, we also have to study GK. Usually, we find very low percentage of questions being asked to you from sources outside India until and unless it's a very important news. So the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, I'm sure all of us are aware of, right? Moderna, all of us are aware of, right? Uh, we are all possibly aware of World Food Program winning the Peace Prize this year. So that's going to be like the type of questions which are asked quite often. In static GK and historical questions, when it comes to the Indian context in GK, we find questions being asked which are again relevant to the social context. So they can ask you questions from B.R. Ambedkar quite naturally, because all of you mentioned about casteism in your chat box. They can ask you about Gandhiji, because Gandhiji started the entire concept of Swadeshi movement and Swaraj along with his friends, which is now being translated as Atmanirbhar Bharat. Very, very similar in nature, right? We wanted to renounce everything that is foreign made, and we wanted to support our charkha, isn't it? So that again becomes very relevant type of questions. And if you have found out past TISSNet papers, you can match what I am telling you. You will see questions from Dandi March, Quit India movement, okay, quotes of Gandhiji, B.R. Ambedkar's Roundtable Conference, being asked a lot in the past. Okay. You will find, questions which are gender centric, more being asked. You will find questions from Constitution, which are connected to rule of law, which are connected to amendment of the Constitution, like Article 32, which is the heart and soul of Constitution, that were asked in the year 2019, and so on and so forth. So these would be the essential, I would say, uh, philosophy when you are preparing for the coming 60 days, right? So don't just, grab a thick book and start, studying it day in, day out, burning the midnight oil, and then, forgetting to eat and sleep and only doing GK, not required. You can be smart enough to understand the nuances in the social science context, right? The same goes with your application of maths. As I'm repeating, mathematics from the chapters that you saw on screen, you should be able to figure out your fundamental concepts. All questions are based on concepts. There is nothing for which you will even be required, let me tell you, any special formula. Like I find a lot of students preparing and they say that, okay, certain profit and loss, if the both the selling prices are equal, then there is a formula. If both the cost prices are same, then there is a formula. If I'm selling it at certain percentage of loss, there is a formula. Okay. But the point is that the fundamental thing is Your calculation of profit on cost price, your calculation of loss on cost price. Profit is defined to be selling price minus cost price. Loss is defined to be cost price minus selling price. And everything follows from that, right? A lot of people argue that, formulas help you to save time. Yes, provided you remember it and you also remember exactly where to apply. If by chance you forget all of these points, then the formula is of no use, right? And the type of questions we see in maths with social science entrance, whether it is Tata Institute of Social Science, whether it is Azim Premji University, in most of the questions, you don't even require a calculator. Like people say that, sir, calculator is not allowed. What will happen? I am so, slow in calculation. But the questions don't demand such level of calculations at all. And in most of the cases, 4 options are given to you at least. So your sense of approximation should give you or get you closest possible to the correct answer, right? So that is again one important point that I would request everyone to keep in mind when you are preparing and looking ahead at your preparation for the next 60 days. 60 days is a lot of time, let me tell you, a lot. If you achieve your preparation milestones in the correct order, it's a lot of time. When you prepare, remember, you start with your most uncomfortable zone. You don't have to make yourself feel good during preparation by doing what you already know. No point. And for that, like students ask me, sir, how do I know what I know well? I don't even know. That is where you should be able to diagnose yourself with practice or evaluation, which is of the correct format. So that's why in Catalyst, with our test series and all, what we do is we try to emulate and simulate as closest as possible to what we have experienced since the last 10 years of the TISS exam, right? And we average that out and we play around a little with the difficulty so that you are exposed to all possibilities. With each of the tests, what happens is you understand that, okay, some of the questions of maths really troubled me, and you see that there is a pattern. The geometry questions gave you a lot of trouble. You may not have been able to get them correct. Or you saw that, okay, verbal ability, which you felt you are quite good at, actually surprised you by, making you get a lot of questions incorrect. Lot of questions in critical reasoning or reading comprehension that you felt you have got correct. It's not true because the options were very close to each other in terms of how they sounded. These are the micro interventions from your end that you have to achieve during the 60 days. Otherwise, mindlessly studying and practicing will not work out. Evaluation is going to be very important. Even last year, when we see on our dashboards the students who got through TISS finally, and even to other colleges. I know the session is only for TISS, but we don't want to be constricted with it because you should have the liberty to think ahead. One common thing that we saw in most of our students who got through the programs of their choice was that they took the assessments very seriously. And a lot of them, they may not be so regular to our training sessions, but they took up the assessment at the initial tests. They were doing quite poorly, but then they addressed the issues. They asked us questions, they addressed the doubts. They pestered us, they bugged us, and we tried our best to support their queries. And that helped them to kind of bridge those gaps. And that is how you prepare. You prepare from your most uncomfortable zone, then go down to the comfortable parts, right? But don't use this strategy during the actual exam. In the actual exam, you do the opposite. You start from your most comfort zone, right? Because actual exam is not the day of experimentation. Your experimentation is now, in these 60 days. In actual exam, you are there with a plan. And what are the plans? Plan A is if TISSNet is up to my expectation, like how I have understood, it is like that. And you will get to know the moment you open the test dashboard, all the questions are in front of you. Whether you're feeling like an alien or no, you will understand looking at the questions and you're looking at the type of difficulty. So that is your plan A. The plan B is when things are not how it is. Then plan B has different sub-routes. Plan B, clause 1, plan B, clause 2, plan C, plan B, clause 3, and so on and so forth. Plan B, clause 1 is GK looks like Hebrew and maths and English are fine, right? Plan B, clause 2 is maths looks challenging, the others are achievable. Then English is like that. And then, you can have multiple combinations. When you grasp the concept of permutation and combination, you will exactly know how many such combinations can be there. You should be ready with all of these clauses in these 60 days, isn't it? Why keep something to be discovered on 20th February? Right? So people or students who get very shocked with their experience at the exam, we don't blame them. It is just that they were possibly unaware of the structured format of preparation and planning. I hope I'm making sense to all of you. I mean, I don't want to just keep on talking. Can people respond, please? You can say, yes, sir, you make sense. Yes, sir, you don't make sense. You can use your
Sir, I
mic.
have a question.
Yes, of course.
So as you were saying about like assessing oneself, sir, like I
Yes.
gave the test mostly. I've completed like all of the tests that are there on verbal ability. Sir, it's not that the I have scored very well in most of them, but it is much better than what I scored in the maths
Right.
tests. So,
Right.
sir, it's like in maths, I want to share like it's not that all the chapters I can't, but the thing is that I mostly do a lot of silly mistakes. So, like, sir, I also shared with you the last day
Yes.
that I gave the test on number system. So, what happened is basically even like sir, the HCF it was there. It was like I had to add them all, but I did not
So
do
can you
that. And
quickly
so,
sum up your question, Madhunima? What you want to ask me?
yes, sir. So, sir, like, how can I just improve on all those
Right.
things
Exactly. So
for
that's the
maths?
point. So when you have identified, right, where you're going wrong or where you're making the mistakes, that is exactly when you start looking at the fundamentals, right? You can refer to the material that you're using, which are proportional to the level of difficulty of a social science entrance. And it is not an MBA entrance exam, right? As I'm again repeating. So you look at the concepts, the fundamentals from textbooks. You ask your mentor, if it is me or anyone else, that how you can improve. You mentioned about silly mistakes, so that means the mistakes are in front of you, right? So possibly you take screenshots of the mistakes and show it to your mentor, so that the mentor assesses that, okay, you made this calculation error, or you have a fundamental understanding which is incorrect, or you are taking a route which is very long, and that is why you are spending more time and in turn making a mistake, because once you've realized I have spent 5 minutes, oh my god, I have to move to the next question, you hurriedly want to finish that attempt, right? So such micro intervention, right, actually helps a lot. Most of our students, Madhurima, thanks for asking the question, they do not, I find them not being patient enough to address these interventions. Okay, they feel, oh, okay, okay, like let me give as many tests as possible. In all tests, you're making mistakes, going on making mistakes. No one's there to rectify you. You are not worried about it. You are waiting when I will do well in the exam. You are going on, buying test packs also. Okay, this pack from here, that pack from there. I will go on buying till I score 100 out of 100. But that's not how it is, right? Because where you scored 100 in that paper, there can be a possibility the questions came from those parts you are good at. And there were higher percentage of such questions, right? So in an exam, you have to be ready that questions can come from different parts. You cannot be fixated with a specific format ever, right? And that is why I mentioned about the different clauses under your plan B. Plan B is always when there is a little hint of adversity, right? So that SWOT analysis should be done or is recommended during these 60 days to the lineup for your exam, right? So that is with maths. Any other queries or questions that I would like to address?
So I had a question.
Please go
Uh,
ahead. May I know who
so
is
these,
this?
Shreya sir.
Shreya, yes, of course.
Yeah. So this 60 days ka period, will it be enough for preparing PAT as and for the interview as well?
PAT,
Uh,
PI, Shreya happens uh, after you have got shortlisted for them,
ha.
right? Whose results are supposedly due most likely in March this year, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
20th February is your exam. And after that, uh, there might be a couple of weeks before we start off with the PAT PI at the campuses, which is going to be mostly virtual this time, right?
Yeah.
So, PAT PI, to be very honest, is a very very different ball game. Let me clarify this. Okay, I don't want to
Correct.
like scare any of you, but if you feel that okay, TISSnet is like a big deal and I will clear this deal first, PATPI is a very different deal altogether. Okay,
Correct.
here all of you are on the same plane, preparing from the same type of material, or if not the concepts, right, for a common entrance exam. But then you are diversifying into 50 courses under the same
Mm-hmm.
institution. And under the 50 courses, every course has an unique PAT and a PI. Can you imagine? So
Yes.
your
Yes.
adjustment, Shreya, when it comes to the preparation, depends a
Mm-hmm.
lot on also how you're effectively managing your time in the day, right? So 24 hours, and if I assume that you need at least 8 hours of sleep, right? 16 hours in a day and multiplied by 7, which is like 102, right? And 100, like, sorry, 112, excuse me. And out of 112, even if you take into instance, certain times when you're not studying, I would say that, out of 112, even if we take like a value of 60% of it, which is effectively say 70 hours a day, right? That's 70 hours, sorry, 70 hours in a week. 70 hours in a week can effectively be used to achieve a lot, depending on how you want to apply it. Now, I don't have a formula, Shreya, that I can share which will fit your requirement, okay? Because there is nothing like a one size fit all approach. If anyone has their mics on, kindly mute it. Thank you. Because TISS is not a one size fitting everyone institute, right? So your adjustments are going to be very critical. So what we do in Catalyst is when we look into the mentoring support, we try to help students with that perspective of your routine, your schedule, your background, your upbringing, right? Your locality, your social location, your knowledge, your competency, your skill, your interests. Everything maps together. The detailed application form require asks you to write about a biographical sketch, which is your personal choice and interest. Okay, I find very interestingly students, they write very well the answers to why are you interested in pursuing the course. but they find it so difficult to assess themselves. They are very clear that, okay, I want to study human resource management because I want to get into corporate. Now, when someone asks you, okay, what is your personal choice? What do you like? People are so unsure of what they like, right? So, Shreya, I think this is a very subjective question. And the best way would be, of course, if you want some more support, you can connect with us offline. Maybe, then the clarity to your thoughts will be more structured, right? Into how you go about dealing with the entire preparation. Any other questions from any other participant, please? Please go ahead. Shoot questions. Who is this?
So
Shrishti?
I
Yes,
yes,
hi.
sir. So my question is basically related to like whenever I'm practicing, say the study material,
Right,
and if I suppose get stuck, I
right.
kind of procrastinate that thing. Like I
Huh.
mean, rather than just pointing it out and asking you directly, I kind of procrastinate. I think I'll do it later,
Right.
and I'm not sure that if it's working out. I mean,
Right. So, Srishti, in Catalyst, we are trying to leverage technology to help in all of your learning. And I wish, we can really have a technology where uh, such, thought processes like procrastination can be detected, in a student and learner's mind. And that can
hmm,
trigger like an signal, to our dashboard that, okay, there you go, Srishti is procrastinating, help
hmm,
her out, right? I wish we can do that. I'm very sure we're not very far away from that day, but till that time, Srishti, I would request you that not to procrastinate, and allow yourself, just put your like mind over your heart, or heart over your mind, whichever way it works, right? Because we are sometimes divided in these two, right? A lot
hmm,
of times students I've seen, they have these very interesting personality traits where they want to resolve the situation themselves. Okay, like they can't overcome the fact that, okay, I cannot uh, get such a simple question correct. Okay, so,
hmm,
and this happens a lot even in exams. We have noticed, like someone, you've been asked to calculate speed, and distance and time are given, and you have
hmm,
done it, answer is not matching. And you are thinking that, how could this happen? I did so much maths, I did so much practice, I cannot solve this simple question. I will only move to the next question till the point I got this answer correct. Okay. So I
hmm,
will request everyone, to please not, seed into uh, your mind tricks. Okay. Because sometimes the human mind can be quite separate from the task at hand, right? And these, again, let me tell you, all of these are also a matter of habit. When you practice and you are exposed to more such situations, you are already prepared somewhere, right? So I
hmm,
would suggest that don't procrastinate, don't waste your time, right? By wasting your time, I mean tension, anxiety, whether I will get vaccine or not. Okay, what will happen at the TISS test center? Okay, shall I be sitting too close to the next, test taker, right? What if, I cannot wear my mask for 100 minutes? Okay, practice it. We want all of you to appear for our entrance tests practices wearing a mask, right? We will try to do sessions wearing a mask from our houses, right? Because many of you, maybe you, I don't know, may not be used to wearing a mask for such long period, because it's just not the 100 minutes test, right? You have to reach the test center, right? The locations from which you'll be reaching will be quite different. So the journey, the time duration, the time you're spending, all of those matter a lot. So there are a lot of technicalities which go in to your effectiveness of handling a question paper at an entrance exam, right? It is not that the paper is being served, on your dining table, isn't it? So that is one aspect I would suggest people who are here, please uh, be very careful and clear about this. Any other questions before we finally round off some of the discussions? Anything else you want to know about data interpretation, verbal ability? You don't know how to go about English? Please go ahead, ask me questions.
Sir, can you please tell?
I think I would take Saurav's question maybe. Saurav, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Mm, Sir, can you share the strategy about verbal like you share GK and math? Sir, I have regarding verbal. I I attempt the question, but I have
Yes,
low confidence.
right. So, sort of like it has been statistically and also like, these experiments have been conducted by many uh, people in psychology, that the only way to build confidence when it comes to, say, a challenge ahead of you is to somewhere confront the challenge more and understand exactly where you are going wrong. So suppose you are attempting a section of verbal ability and you are facing issues with, say, reading comprehension. You read a passage, but then the 5 questions that you attempted, all of them became incorrect. Okay,
Hmm.
that means there is an understanding of the like a misunderstanding of the technique towards reading comprehension. So it is not that you are not good at reading comprehension, sort of. It is just that you are lacking awareness about the technicalities of how to read a comprehension passage, how to quickly understand the requirement of a question, how to know what is the tone of a passage, whether it is a negative, whether it is positive, how to understand the central plot of the passage, how to understand what is the conclusion to the passage, right? How to realize what is the premise or argument of the passage. So once you are aware of this sort of, or someone teaches you this, you will never find yourself committing such mistakes when you attempt a reading comprehension passage.
Yeah.
So I think sort of the importance here lies in your building of concept and technical approach towards the questions in verbal ability. The social science entrance tests, when it comes to the English part, this is one
Hmm.
aspect where many students become a little complacent. Suppose they have studied at an English medium background, they feel that, okay, I possibly will be finding it much easier to deal with. And then a lot of students who are not from an English medium background, they find it to be very harsh on them because they have not been exposed to the language, right? But the social science verbal ability does not really test you on your vocabulary as such. It does not really test you, how fluent you can speak in English either. It tests how well you apply your reasoning skills with the context that has been mentioned. So if a fill in the blanks question is given, two words are missing, and you have to fill in those blanks with words from the options, you should be able to come to terms with the context of the sentence. Once the meaning of the sentence is clear,
Yeah.
or the application of the sentence is clear, you will find the linkage to the given words. If questions on rearranging sentences, to form a meaningful paragraph is asked
Yeah.
to you, you should be able to understand the linkages across the sentences. What could be the presumably the opening sentence of the link? So it is a technical part. It is not a test of whether you studied William Shakespeare, right? So the reputation of the verbal ability part is very different to literature. Most of us make a mistake of thinking that, okay, I must have studied literature, and I must have studied certain prose and pieces, poetry, or I should be able to really speak well in English, apply words, have a strong vocabulary. But it is not true. 80% of students who graduate from an institute like TISS forget speaking in English. They end up starting their careers speaking Odia, Assamese, Marathi, uh, tribal languages, Nepali language, Bhutia language, languages of Adivasis, right? In interior villages of Madhya Pradesh. very tribal languages, right? Gujarati, when they're working with places like Kutch, right? So do not think ever that communication is only possible in English.
Yeah.
So many of our past students, even at the interviews, they spoke in only Hindi or in a language which the faculty panel could understand. I even have people speaking in Malayali to the panel and they got through. So I want to restore this confidence in everyone's mind that it has really got nothing to do with your ability of presenting yourself speaking the language of English. It is your ability to understand with your sense of reasoning the structural requirement in the language, right? So I would suggest that look at verbal ability in that format, not as something where you need to really mug up a lot of words. Like I see students, they are studying and I think they're learning word meanings, and they are saying that such word meanings are important for analogy and synonyms, which is quite untrue because TISS does not require, or any social science entrance do not require you to mark such words. To the extent, even if they give you synonyms, antonyms, and analogy, it will be more logical in nature than knowing the meanings of difficult words. Even exams like GRE and GMAT that previously had a reputation that they will be giving you words, and people used to study 5,000 words from Barron's and Kaplan. The structure has changed immensely because they would find that people a lot from very hardworking nations like India and China, they would end up remembering all 5,000 words because they've been preparing for those for last 5 years, and they would succeed in these exams with flying colors. But that was not a measure of their aptitude towards what they want to study, right? So your ability to communicate effectively is going to be most important, and your ability to interpret passages, communication, reasoning is going to be also very important when you are dealing with your strategy towards verbal ability for a social science entrance. Saurav, I hope you're feeling better.
Yes, sir. Sir, hello, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Sir, sir, is not difficult like that cat that verbal ability.
Not at all, never. That's exactly the reason why I'm doing the session tonight. It is not at all
Yes,
difficult like CAT because it's not the CAT exam. This is where I want
yes,
to all of you to have to restore your faith back into the society, right?
yes,
Don't be
yes, sir.
disconnected from it. So wherever you're
Uh,
coming from, your understanding and perspective will really matter a lot when you're preparing.
yes,
Okay, I will take sort of more of your queries offline for sure. Any other questions before we round the session of tonight?
yes, sir.
How is development studies from TISS?
Shreya, is it you?
Yes, sir.
Development Studies, Shreya, is a brilliant program, right? In fact, if you want to know about development studies, I would recommend, I hope everyone can see my screen. There is this video on our, is this there? Let me see. On our page on LinkedIn by R3, who is from Development Studies. If it is not on LinkedIn, it must be there on our YouTube page also. Uh, and you can know everything about development studies, Shreya, because it is what we call the mother of social science. Mother of social science means, Shreya, everything that you can talk of social science, uh, you can know from development studies for sure. So I would request everyone, if you want to really know well about development studies, so go ahead and catch up with this video on our YouTube page by one of our past student, R3, and you will find great clarity to the type of opportunities which development studies present to all of you. So I've shared the link with you, Shreya, and the type of placements are also very strong. Placements are, they start off from, starting salaries of 6 lakh plus to goes up to, up to 15, 14 lakhs per annum. Very comparable to many other programs from TISS as well as from other colleges also. Very balanced opportunities in the corporate and government opportunities, non-profits also. So Shreya, if you are going ahead for development, I can assure you it's very, very strong prospect, even if you want to foray into research later on.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sabia, for psychology again, I think you asked me this question. I will just address Sabia's query. Sabia, for psychology also, you can take note of some of our past students' videos on the Facebook, on our YouTube page. Uh, Great opportunities for social work in the field of mental health, working with corporate, the CSR, definitely clinical agencies, even like super opportunities with counseling, working with government and the civil society. It's a very, very strong discourse. The applied psychology program as well as the social work programs at TISS, variably they are very crucial towards many of our acts and policies connected to mental health also. So I will request people who are interested, you can watch this video that I shared on your chat. That should sum up your major queries, Sabia. Final questions, please. Anyone else? Finishing this off. We wanted to do 60-day strategy in 60 minutes, but we have exceeded that time much. Any other questions or queries, people? Pooja, how to prepare for development course? I feel, Pooja, you have to first look at things step by step. TISSNet and development, you should be able to really focus on your overall exposure that is can be linked to development studies with projects, fieldwork, exposure, your very strong application also towards the development field. So everything together will sum up your credibility towards the development course, right? You cannot be half-hearted with any program at TISS, because the social science sector and the social development sector requires great level of motivation from all of you. You can't be half-hearted in what you do, like, because you are constantly answerable and accountable of every action that you're taking, right? When it comes of development also, we have been talking a lot that this year is the age of human beings. Our actions are shaping the planet, right? Whether it is the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it is the climate change, whether it is the global recession. So the point is that you should be able to reflect that level of commitment towards that course, your internalization of that course, right? In our training at Catalyst, we provide a lot of that template for students to explore. There is no fixed rule again that you should do this and that only, then you can get through development. Your own exposure and your background can be made linkable, provided you understand how to link it to the expectation and outcomes of a development studies program offered by TISS. Okay, any other questions? Right. So my final points and suggestions for all of you will be that whatever little or more you do and prepare, do it well. Don't keep it half-hearted, right? So even if you feel that, there are certain topics in maths which you find to be very challenging, and you still feel it's challenging, even say 2 weeks to the test, and so on and so forth, I would request that, don't write it off completely. Try to at least, maybe know some basic concepts which you can understand from it. But realize that the rest of the parts which you have done over the days, you should know them really, really well, right? The TISS maths, or any social science entrance maths, is very fundamental in nature, right? That you saw. It is very proportional to the type of work you'll be doing in the future, right? You are not a mathematician uh, who is being tested, right? You are a social uh, science aspirant, you are a budding social innovator, you are a development professional, and you should be aware of the basic applications that will be required for you to apply in the field and in your domain, right? Even with verbal ability that I mentioned, the technicalities are going to be very important. The way you read a passage, quickly assimilate what you understand out of it, your understanding of premises, arguments. When it comes to GK, I spoke a lot about understanding the pulse of the society, right? And then optimizing your static as well as current affairs. Uh, and of course, paying heed to COVID 19. COVID 19 has led to many new happenings throughout the year. You cannot be ignorant of it, right? When it comes to uh, data interpretation, again, basic applications of arithmetic and statistics into reading tables and charts, which you should be very, very comfortable with. And again, your basics of maths basically does the trick for you. Logical reasoning in TISS net, again, this is one part which you should be following quite diligently because they come within the section of mathematics. Basics of your application of seating arrangement and coding decoding, blood relations, or even like basics of your things like a direction test. These questions which you will find in any standard quantitative book, non-cat, will be very, very helpful, as well as people who are accessing our material. It has been curated for that purpose specifically. And of course, then we are left with yeah, that's how it is, right? And most importantly, be excited of what you're doing. You can't be pressurized. You can't be saying to yourself, oh God, when will I get over TISNet, and then I can comfortably study my subject. If that is your approach and attitude, then there is going to be some loopholes in your preparation. So your associativeness of what you're studying is going to be very important. And if you cannot associate yourself with it at all, right, don't go with it, right? Don't do it because your neighbor told you, your relative told you, there is societal pressure. Because I am telling you, no, because your seniors did it. Not really. You are yourself, and you can achieve a lot when you be yourself. So that goes without saying that the self confidence is going to be very important. And confidence comes from clarity, right? So I hope some of the points we shared tonight is going to give you like a grounding of how you take it step by step and you assimilate your preparation well, right? Your assessments are important and your self assessments are very important, because then you exactly understand what is in store for you, right? So keep up that momentum, right? And do also exercise a lot of gratitude towards everyone around, because that also helps you to be happy, uh, kind of be relieved of tension. So express your gratitude to your family, to your parents, to the healthcare workers all around us at this moment. Express your solidarity with families and people who might have lost their near and dear ones even due to the pandemic, and understand that all of us are together. And that is where collectivism, I think, one of the points that Santoshi had mentioned, is where we come from, right? So these sensibilities should prevail when you're preparing, right? And keep smiling, stay connected. Even if you cannot step out of your house, use technology as much as possible, because these 60 days are going to shape a lot in your lives. So instead of getting into the pressure of the hype, try to enjoy this, right? Listen to music. If you can match maths and music together, do that, right? So these would give you a very exciting format of preparation, right? Share your ideas with us. Don't be hesitant of how we are going to judge you on your ideas. Not really, right? Because the idea is yours, right? It's there because something can be achieved and done. So I feel that mindset is going to be very critical in the 60 days, over and above our syllabus, our curriculum, what we study, what we don't study, and all, right? So thank you, student, for being with me tonight and sharing your thoughts and opinion also. Stay in touch if you require any further help. Definitely feel free to share your opinion and your feedback on our email ID. I'm just sharing that, support@catalanserve.com. We will certainly revert to you with a possible resolution. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Wishing all of you all the success for the days ahead, all the milestones that you achieve, and all that you want to aspire. Thank you so much. All the best. Have a very good night.